Hey, it's Matt Pinfield. We're here at KLOS, new and approved. I'm here with Dave Wakeling of the English Beat, a guy I love. You know, I've been a fan of the band since I was a teenager. I went out and I bought the 7-inch. I saw the 7-inch on two-tone of Tears of a Clown and Ranking Full Stop in the store, and I went, oh, smoky cover. I gotta hear what this sounds like. And that was really an introduction to me to the second wave of ska and your incredible songwriting. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's so great to have you here, you know, and I love the fact that, you know, Rhino has re-released one of my favorite albums, I Just Can't Stop It. This is just, if you like ska, like pop, like rock, anything, this record is incredible, and it's on magenta vinyl. But we gotta.
They made a great job of it, I must say. I'm proud of the job Rhino did. Like the sleeves done very nicely, the album, the spellings all correct, and the vinyl's like good top quality. The sound of the mastering is really good quality. So everything a little bit step up, which people had told me was kind of Rhino's trademark.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see we got a taste of that. It makes you look that little bit more classy, and you're suddenly in a stable with very classily made records, the Talking Heads and Devo, and makes you look like the big time.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing. Rhino reissues everything, and even on the classic side, everything from the Doors to Deep Purple. They have so many different things that they do, and all the alternative stuff.
They seem to do a pretty good job across the genres. I had a good search on their website first, and even though they sell different things depending on what fans want in those particular genres, each one was like a classy version of it. There was nothing hard sell or tacky about it, which I was impressed by that.
Oh, yeah, especially since, you know, you've seen, you know, some reissues through the years that have just not been, you know, there's nothing about the band in there, their history, or, you know, it's just not, it sounds like, I remember they would, like, it sounds like it wasn't even mastered correctly. But let's go back. Dave, you guys are from the Birmingham area, right?
Correct,
Birmingham,
most of us,
Most of you guys.
Yeah.
Tell me about when the band formed. Was it about 76, 77? What year was it?
It was 77 we put ourselves together in the Isle of Wight, where we were living, working for Andy the guitarist's brother-in-law, making solar panels, which was a very optimistic job on the south coast of England, anyway. But it was a reasonable success if you ever wanted hundreds of gallons of slightly warm water. We were the company to go to.
Right. But it's great. And you guys were, like, you guys had jobs. You were young guys. And it was
we were doing that, working outdoors, building these solar panels and sitting in front of wood fires, writing songs and playing guitars for entertainment. It didn't start off as an idea for a group until some other people in the house said, "Oh, that's a good one, you know, people would like that. You should be in a group." And that was Best Friend, the song Best Friend. So we moved back to Birmingham and started really, I would say, March of 78. We started rehearsing on a weekly basis and recruited a drummer, and that was the start of it being a group, I think.
Yeah. And, you know, I know for America, I mean, really, the taste of ska and reggae that was here, that was in pop charts. I mean, Millie's My Boy Lollipop was one of the earliest. And then Desmond Decker's The Israelites, of course, was a hit in the late 1960s. I remember he was hearing it on the radio. But I mean, it was very different exposure to ska and to reggae in America at that period of time.
It was.
You know,
we realised that when we first came over here to do shows.
Yeah.
People were asking about it. What is this?
Yeah, right.
But we'd already mixed it up to be a punky reggae party, you know.
Yeah.
That, after Bob Marley's song of the same title, that's we'd found at our house parties, and you'd see at a lot of concerts, this blending between punk and reggae. They got a similar social message, feeling kind of outcasts from society, you know, going on about truth and rights and that sort of thing. And oddly enough, Rastas and punks were banned from the same sort of places throughout England.
Yeah.
So outlaws and comrades, you know, and you'd often have a reggae group stuck in the middle of some punk bands, and it'd be kind of like the chill-out room might be. It gave everybody a break and then back on with the Damned. The Slits were very big into that in London and had a punky reggae road show.
Yeah, they did that version of I Heard It Through the Grapevine, which was great.
And so we did the same in Birmingham. There was only one club that was really that great for bands, Barbarella's, which got closed down a lot. And so house parties were popular. And we had a couple of DJs, one playing reggae dubs and 12 inches, and another one playing all the latest neon punk singles. And we found that if you had a combination of the two, the dance floor would stay packed all night. And one particularly successful evening, we had a lot of people who would end up being prominent at the house parties. We didn't know, but Boy George came, some UB40s came, the Au Pairs came, a couple of Duran dropped in once, even a couple of Dexys Midnight Runners, although they weren't allowed to be there, so we had to promise not to tell. But Andy, the guitarist, said, what if you could get both DJs in the same 3-minute pop song? What would you have then, Dave? So to blend the punk and the reggae together into the same song. And that was, I thought, the birth of it. We all had our own ideas about how we would approach that. I heard a jam session between Toots and the Maytals and the Velvet Underground.
Yeah.
So it had got this city angst and throb to it, but it had got that lovely uplifting lilt of the reggae and ska. David Steele, the bass player, wanted it to be like the Monkees, but we'd secretly got John Lennon writing the lyrics behind the screens to see what we could get away with. Hey, we're subversive. And so we'd all got slightly different angles of where we wanted it to come from. But that was the idea, to get the energy of punk and with the sinuous, seductive backbeat of the ska or the reggae, and try and create the perfect hybrid Black Rose. That was our idea. Get all our influences and see if we could make a universal beat that even people who couldn't dance could dance to. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, it was people were so excited about it when you guys did your first single. Tell me how you came to do Tears of a Clown and how the rest of the band came together. I mean, we had talked in the elevator on the way up. Rankin Roger was 16 when the band started, right? And
David Steele was 19.
David Steele was 19. And, you know, it's so great how Saxa was 62. You had a real seasoned, great sax player. I loved it. Was, you know, it was a multicultural in every way. I mean, it was, you know, I thought
multi-generational. So it was difficult to get a peer group argument going because everybody naturally looked at the world completely differently.
Yeah.
From their experiences. Everett was in his 30s, early 30s, I think. He'd worked in a factory making kettles, spinning the metal that made kettles for the last 12 years, and played in soul bands around Birmingham on the drums. So he had a different vision of what was happening.
Yeah.
Saxa had been propped up with vodka for the last 30 years, and so he knew this was going to happen. This was the band he'd been waiting for, and he'd get his knife out and cut X's in things to prove my marker hex.
Yeah.
To say this was going to go all the way. And he was right, which was odd.
I mean, I absolutely loved it, you know, and it was the idea of, you know, being multiracial too, black and white and everybody. It was just like, you know, like Sly and the Family Stone and Love and bands like that in America. It was just a really cool thing, what was happening.
There was a nice unconscious message that we were all kind of similar.
Yeah.
All kind of the same and in the same boat. So you didn't necessarily need to do a speech about racial equality or anything like that. You just sang the song and everybody kind of got it. what Greenpeace would have called a mind bomb.
Yeah.
Like you give an example of something and then you don't really have to discuss it in depth. Everybody gets it, you know.
Yeah.
And I suppose for better or worse, we did have a lot of fans in America who said first time they'd ever met any black friends was at a Beat concert. First time they'd liked a group that had got black and white people in it. And in some ways it feels a bit sad to hear that, but better to hear it than not.
Right, exactly. Yeah, which is amazing.
And we had that all over from white people and black people, so that was quite good.
Yeah.
Another kind of added addition to what we were on about and wanting to be egalitarian, and it being kind of an example of it in the way the group came across to people.
Yeah, and so Tears of a Clown became a hit for you guys. Why that song, was it something that you guys decided, hey, it's a cool Smokey song, or how did it end up being the first single on Two Tone?
Well, Everett, the drummer, after about the first month of rehearsals, we would play the songs, and for about a minute or two, it had got this wonderful, never heard anything like it before beat, and then everybody would start drifting off into their own particular vision and style, and it would become a mess, and then it might come back. I used to think of it as this ellipse that would get created by these circles, and it would just hold for a minute, then it would drift off again. And Everett was a bit frustrated and said, why don't we, for next Tuesday, it was Tuesday night's rehearsal night, why don't we all learn a song that we already kind of know and practice that next Tuesday, and then we could try one of your weird ones, like that Mirror song. Oh, right, we said. And it actually took us a long time to find a song that we all knew, that everybody knew. Even though there was only about 14 years between David and Everett, that was enough to start a gulf. And so Tears of a Clown was the first song that we all knew. Well, we all thought we knew. It was actually quite a complicated song, so most of us learnt most of it. It just left the difficult bits out, and we practiced that on the Tuesday, and it was quite good. So then we practiced Click Click, and then we did Tears of a Clown, then we did Big Shot, then we did Tears of a Clown, then we did Twist and Crawl, then we did Tears of a Clown, then we did Mirror in the Bathroom, Tears of a Clown, Two Swords. And it went round like that, Tears of a Clown, Best Friend. And Tears of a Clown got rehearsed much more than any of the other songs. So when we had 8 songs ready, 7 plus Tears of a Clown, David Steele said you only had to have 8 songs to do a show. He had the punk notebook.
Yeah.
Because he was still a teenager, you see. Me and Andy were over 21, so could not be believed on punk issues, regardless. So 8 shows, that's enough. 8 songs. So we added Tears of a Clown, and the first gigs we got, some were reggae clubs, some were punk clubs, some were working men's Christmas parties, whatever you got, a Welsh town hall for some reason. And sometimes the punk songs would go down great, sometimes the reggae songs would go down great, but every night Tears of a Clown brought the room down. It's like, wow. So when Two Tone asked us to do a single, Jerry Dammers came to our show in Birmingham and said, I've got this record company, a record label, would you like to do a song? We said yes. And we'd all presumed it would be Mirror in the Bathroom because it's kind of different, still a bit different from everything else, I think. And we'd presumed that, but met a hiccup when Chrysalis, who were the owners behind Two Tone Records, said that they'd have to own it for 5 years. It couldn't be on our album unless we signed to them for the album. Well, that sounded a bit ridiculous. We hadn't been in a group long enough to think that sounded okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we can't have our best song on our first album. Run that by us again then. So it became quite an issue, and so we had to, in the end, we insisted Tears of a Clown or nothing, on the idea that they could argue with Smokey Robinson about whose song it was.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as it turned out, it was a good accident because the record came out in October, and with English radio at that time, during November, they're really forming what the Christmas playlist is going to be. And everybody's vying to be on that playlist. And Tears of a Clown just sailed through all its tests. It suited everybody, just like it had at the gigs. Old and young liked it. It was a kind of speeded up party version of a song that everybody loved. So it ticked all the boxes. And I don't know if Mirror in the Bathroom would have done in November. You know, here's 5 plucky lads from the Midlands with a song about narcissism and nervous breakdowns. Happy holidays. So, but whereas Tears of a Clown just sailed through and ended up, I think, number 6 in the charts not long after Christmas week. And the playlist was frozen then for about a month. So it was just played and played and played. They pushed their luck then. They brought out Hands Off She's Mine as the next single, bringing out Mirror in the Bathroom with the album as a third single. A bit like playing bridge, that was like. See if you could get a no trump. So, and they did. I think Hands Off She's Mine went to number 3 in England.
Yeah.
And then they released, or 6 again, who knows. And then Mirror in the Bathroom came with the album, May 1980, and that went to number 3 as well.
Yeah, I mean, all those songs getting up that high. And I told you this story before, but I felt at home when I was over in Belgium. I was on the road with this band. I got out of the tour bus, and most people had a hangover. They were playing Reading and Leeds, you know, the big festival. Yeah. Of course, I know you know that, but for those watching and listening. And I remember not knowing the language. I was in a town called Pier, Belgium. We were there. The tour bus had taken the ferry over. And I was hungry. I was like, you know, we're a bit hungover, but got to get some food. And it was beautiful. It felt alien. But when I sat down, because I had appointed the food that I was going to order for breakfast, radio was playing in this cafe. Hands Off She's Mine came on. And I felt like, oh, my God. Now it made me feel at home, relaxed me, you know. You
could get on with your horse steak breakfast that you just pointed at.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I love the song so much, and it was such a part of my history, you know, growing up, and love that song and always have, that it made me feel good. And I think that's the thing that these songs do. They're smart, but they also, you know,
There was an idea of uplifting, I think. Yeah. And sometimes, as a contrast and combination between the music being very uplifting and the lyrics being a bit sardonic or dark, but with a grin, you know, like life is tough, isn't it? Yes, but you can still have a smile about it. But the music was, in the main part, uplifting by nature to make that sort of contrast that even though life can be tough or horrible, life itself is still beautiful and a joy. Yeah. And I heard that a lot in reggae music. It seemed a noble kind of music that had probably come out of a time of oppression where you could imagine it was music instead of dinner, not after dinner music.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
And so it had a sort of sense of nobility and a joy of just being still alive. And we wanted to get an element of that. Whereas punk was a bit more slashing and cynical, wasn't it? The urban angst that we'd grown up in. So we wanted the combination of those two and to cheer people up whilst at the same time perhaps saying something that would catch their attention and go, whoa, what did you mean by that? And
yeah,
aha, exactly. Gotcha.
And you did that on this record, too. Mirror in the Bathroom, what was the original idea for that song since we talked about it? And it's such...
Well, David Steele had that bass line, which I think is still one of the most original bass lines ever, isn't it?
It's so
Twist and Crawl's a cousin.
Yeah, they're both which was a B-side, which is so great when the single came out.
They're both in 2/2 time. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 instead of 1 2 3 4 1 2 3. It's kind of the same, but twice the insistence, you know. And that made a big difference. We're swapping hangover stories. My lyrical idea came from waking up to go to work on the construction site, bit of a headache, realised I hadn't hung my clothes up to dry, so I was going to have to put them back on wet, get on a motorbike and go to work on this site in the snow. Not a great thought. And so I hung the clothes up and was steaming them whilst I had a shave, and I started talking to myself, saying, "We don't have to do this, Dave. You know, we don't have to go. We don't have to leave the house, really. Look, the door's locked." I pointed over my shoulder.
Yeah.
But we did have to go because we needed to do something about the hangover. With Guinness written all over it that night, probably. So we needed it for any number of reasons. So off to work we went. And but the idea stuck with me. Please talk, door is locked, just you. It's just started forming as a poem on the motorbike, and it carried on during the day at work, which was a British tradition. They probably have it here, but they're called neck down jobs. So you clock on, switch off, and your thoughts are your own for the day, so long as your muscles lift the right amount of sand or whatever it is. And then you clock off and you can switch back on again. So there was a lot of poetry going on the site that day. And then when I got home, I realised that what I'd got kind of fitted David's weird 2/2 cassette that he'd made. That I was like, I don't know, he'd write lyrics to that. And by accident, thank God, it turns out I just had.
Which is amazing because, you know, I mean, those songs are still... I mean, people love them to this day and listen to them all the time. I mean, they still get people moving every time you hear them, which I love. You know, the fourth single on the record was, you did the cover of Andy Williams' Can't Get Used to Losing You, which turned me on to it because, you know, it's funny. I would see Andy Williams as a kid on TV and, you know, think he was uncool because I was a rock kid and just loved, you know.
Did you watch the TV show with his brothers?
Yeah. I would see it sometimes.
The one brother would... always fancied he should have been Andy, didn't he? I'd love to know his name.
Exactly.
Every time he tries to outshine Andy, and Andy had to put him back in his place.
It was funny. And you made me really appreciate and fall in love with this song. And then I went back years later and realized even Andy, I love Andy's version too because I got a little older. But I remember when it first came out,
those pizzicato strings are just glorious, aren't they? You know?
Yeah, but it was so great that you guys decided to do that song. What was it? What was the thing that inspired you to do so? Was it because you guys had this?
There were two parallel lines. One, when we started Go Feet Records, we invited people to send cassettes of demos and to see if they could have a single on Go Feet Records. And... a group called the Mood Elevators sent in a tape called Annapurna, and that came out as a single. It turns out that, which I found this out many, many years later, a group that was about to be called Wham sent a tape with 3 songs on it, one of which was Can't Get Used to Losing You. But the band member who got that tape, I now know who it was, didn't mention anything at the time. And... I was talking to my dad, who'd had a few drinks, and he said, "I don't blame you, Dave." He said, "I blame the Beatles." I'm like, "I'm sorry? Where are we going with this?" He said, "Well, they were the first ones who thought they could do the lot, didn't they? We can write them, produce them, we can even do the bloody sleeve, we can do the lot." He said, "You never caught Frank Sinatra doing that, did you?" "No. He was out doing models." He said they had real songwriters, Dave, Tin Pan Alley. No offence meant, but real songwriters, proper songwriters. They wrote the tunes. He did the models.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, I see." And he said, "You know what? You could sing the piss out of our kid."
Yeah.
That, "Can't get loose to using you." Can't get loose to using you.
That's amazing.
I'm like, "Oh, yes." I said, "Okay." Well, not long afterwards, at a group meeting, David Steele said, "Do you know what would turn into a really good reggae song? That Can't Get Used to Losing You." I said, "That's funny." I said, "My dad just mentioned that. Let's have a go." And he was right, because the bum, 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 very similar to a reggae beat, or quite associated, so it wasn't a stretch, apart from I didn't know how to sing it. And I had a few goes in the studio, and I was starting to get scared, and my voice was tightening up, and I was starting to feel a bit embarrassed. And I thought, well, I'll just have another go. And I thought to myself, I'll do an Andy Williams impersonation. Oh, we got to the end of the tape. Oh, that's it, Dave. Nailed it. Nailed it. Let's have another couple like that, just for the odd spot here or there. So I didn't tell them that I was trying to do an Andy Williams impersonation. But I carried on, and they were happy with it. And after it was mixed and done, I said, my method acting was I was trying to be Andy.
Yeah, it's amazing you did that. And the single was successful again, right? I mean, it was...
They brought it out after the group split up at the very end, and it went to number 3 as well, our lucky number, So even after the group was gone, it was a hit. And very nicely, they added some extra strings to it and made a 12-inch mix to it. So that was a little bit added extra to it.
Yeah, and then you guys came and, you played, you started touring America. I remember you played Emerald City and...
New Jersey.
In New Jersey.
That's right. That's where we did the two-tone film, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That had been owned by Frank Sinatra at some point.
Yes.
But I don't know if it was that location, because it used to be somewhere else,
yes.
That club. But a famous club. And we were a bit concerned about Dance Craze two-tone movie. It had started off as an idea about a film about madness. And Madness's producers were in charge of the music, and the specials were like the main two-tone thing. So we thought, well, the best you're going to be is third fiddle here. You know.
Was it Clive Langer and Alan Winstanley?
Yes, that's it. Clanger and Winstanley,
who did the all the Madness stuff.
Yes, and they were doing the soundtrack or the mixing for the film as well.
And then, of course, Specials was their label with Jerry Tammers. So you guys were like. Hey,
we thought it might be a bit much, so we tried to get out of it and left it hanging until we said, oh, we've got to go on tour in America. We don't have time now. Oh, bloody shame,
Yeah.
And we thought we'd got away with it, and a couple of weeks later they called and said, fantastic news. This club used to be owned by Frank Sinatra, and this bloke who lives round the corner has just invented this thing called the Steadicam. And he's willing to use it on you. We've got this use of it. So we had to act all excited then.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
And he found that guy in South Jersey. I'm a Jersey guy, so that's why, I know from living there.
Well, anyway, it gave it a lovely different flavour from the English bands. And there was a great light system because it was a disco as well as a concerts club, Emerald City, wasn't it? So it looked very different and exciting. And... the crowd was a different crowd and more having a good time rather than making a statement. And so we played like that and ended up, I think, doing, even according to Jerry Dammers, like the best live set of the movie.
Yeah.
So we turned out to be a good thing, although we did our darndest to try and avoid it.
Yeah. That's amazing coming back, and it worked out that you were over there. That's really great to hear that.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much and that has inspired, you guys inspiring the bands, everybody, from No Doubt to Rancid. I mean, you could just, list goes on and on. It's incredible how many, that second wave of ska, which was really its own thing because it kind of reinvented it with all that punk vigor. One of the funniest things I've ever seen you say, Dave, live, which I loved. I was in Vegas, and, I've seen you numerous.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a fan forever, so I've seen you, with General Republic, and I've seen you. And but you were the greatest. You go, if I knew I was going to be doing these songs like 30 years later, I'm going to sing them a little slower.
Yeah.
I put a few less words in them. Because, you've got this incredible staccato delivery, but also the lyrics are smart and they're intuitive. I've always loved that about what you can do. So for me, you're a great lyricist too.
They take a long time to write, and you can write them in your head as slow as you like and think of every syllable and that. Then all of a sudden, especially if you're not in charge of the band, you've got this lightning hot, red hot, 100 mile an hour version, and sometimes it feels like the Auctioneers song where you've got to try and fit the lyrics in now. That was true on a couple of early beat songs, or I remember one, She's Going. Oh, there's no breath in it at all. It's quite tricky. So then if you've got a lot of words, you've got to do your best to try and enunciate them. I like to hear the lyrics on a song. I don't really like it if the lyrics are difficult to hear.
I agree. I think it's that it gives you something to hold on to besides the melody and the groove and everything else that's
And do you know what it was? When I went dancing at Barbarella's, sometimes by myself or with some mates, but when you're on the dance floor, you're effectively by yourself, and you'd be listening to songs that you'd listened to at home or you'd heard other places. But when you were dancing to it, something happened that the lyrics went 3D and started explaining themselves. I figured out afterwards it was probably that I was limbically connected, like young guys. If your arms and legs are moving, your brain can be more focused, supposedly. Yes. But that's what it was like. It was suddenly, the lyrics would become neon. Oh, I get it. That's what he means. And when you'd get home and listen to the song at home, it still meant that. It was as though you'd learnt something about the lyric. So I always took them very seriously, that they were quite powerful punches, that you got everybody dancing, their hearts are open, so their minds are a bit more open.
Yeah.
So it's a big responsibility, but you could suggest something that might steer the conversation. You can't tell them what to think. Yeah. That's for them, isn't it? But you could open lines of inquiry.
You definitely can. I mean, Standing Out Margaret, too. Let's talk about, while we're still talking about this record. The period, there was that period of, with Thatcher and everything that was going on in the country. But till you put that in a song that people get to know, what was that period? What was that like at that period of time? Because obviously, there were a lot of people, artists out there that, were unhappy. It was obviously, a time when a lot of people were on the dole. They were on the unemployment.
Yeah, a lot of unemployment. There was the big argument, I suppose, in a sentence, was Margaret Thatcher insisted that there was no such thing as society.
Yeah.
It was a myth. There was just a collection of people who happened to live on the same rock, and it's everybody for themselves.
Yeah.
That there is no society. And that, I think, that went against most of English, British, Anglo-Saxon tradition for the last 3,000 years. And so it broke the social contract. So if you could get away with it, it was okay. And it made for a type of class-ridden crony capitalism. It wasn't even straightforward business, It was just dirty business, kind of like down to the Victorian class-ridden times where you're only allowed a certain amount of social access anyway, because that's all you're useful for. Which seems really regressive, considering the general vibes in Europe, even America. But Margaret Thatcher was she loved Ronald Reagan a bit too much, so she kind of idolised him and tried to transplant his idea into England, which was post-empire. We'd lost our empire. The place was falling to bits. So it was really the wrong time to start saying, it's everybody for themselves.
Yeah, because it was a tough time.
It did cause a lot of arguments. And certainly England in the 60s and 70s, which had been Labour or socialist, and the unions took a bit of an advantage of that, and they wouldn't let mines or trains be improved, but they still wanted getting paid wages more and more as if they had been improved. And it did get a bit out of hand, but her cure to just basically get rid of trade unions by having policemen on horses with sticks hit them till they stopped. That caused a lot of trouble, and still has, to be honest. Parts of northern England never came back. They're ghost towns still. The unemployment's still pretty rotten. Food banks. We even have members of the royal family visiting food banks as though that's a photo opportunity.
Yeah.
How nice of them. What?
Yeah.
No, give us a jewel off your crown.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's very tone deaf. And so it still goes on, and it's sort of going on here, isn't it? Because around the same time with Ronald Reagan, they had the trickle-down economics, which never really was believed, but everybody kept pushing it. It's now, I think, been pretty well disapproved and dismembered. It doesn't work. I went to the town where they started the idea in Scotland, and it worked there, but that's because they were all nearly related to each other. So they didn't mind the money trickling down within the clan in Kilcuddy, or whatever I think the place was called. But it doesn't work. It has never worked because we're human and we're a bit greedy. So if the money's meant to trickle down past us, well, everybody grabs a couple of extra handfuls on the way down until you don't get more than halfway down and it's all gone.
Yeah.
And sadly, we're seeing that now at the 40 years, and that's the blessing and the curse of it is a lot of the lyrics on this record were singing about that sort of stuff through our vision of Thatcherite Britain, or Reaganomics, if you will. And now, over 40 years later, we're seeing the result of it. It hasn't worked, and just what everybody predicted, the haves have got of having a lot more, and the have-nots are way down there. So the difference between CEOs and the people who work for them is massive compared to what it was. And that was always the fear with trickle down, was that it would trickle up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, you address these things on all the records. What Happened, which was the next album too, had a lot of great songs on it as well.
Get a Job.
Yeah.
There's a training course where boys and girls of real ambition get a new job in a factory where they're making ammunition.
Yeah, I mean,
it's horrible that they're coming true. They were meant to be warnings, not predictions.
Yeah, well, there's so much stuff going on. It's insane right now, as you know. I love that record. And the third record, of course, Special Beat Service, was the American audience here and in Los Angeles, but everywhere, really gravitated towards that record. It was so nice. It was
a poppy, an American sounding, or more American sounding, wasn't it? It wasn't quite so punky, edgy as the first one. It wasn't quite so dubby, psychedelic as the second one, but it was quite straightforward. And songs like I Confess and Save It for Later seem to touch the heart. They're between the reggae and the pop.
Yeah, it really connected with so many people, and they still love it. And I always loved Soul Salvation. The lyrics were unbelievable. Yes. And your delivery in that song, which was so great.
There's quite a lot of words in that. I would have had that a bit slower if I'd had my choices all over again. It's from E.M. Forster, had this book of essays called Two Cheers for Democracy. And one of the essays was called that. And he wrote it just after World War II. And his notion was, don't ask me to love Germans. That's going to take a minute, And I don't expect them to love me after what we've just been doing to each other these last few years. But he said, I am willing, if they're willing, to tolerate them, if they'll tolerate me. And if we do that for long enough, we might get used to each other. We might even end up liking each other at one time. And I just thought that was a much more pragmatic view of things rather than that all we need is love. Yeah. We know that's all we need is love. We just don't know how to get there. And so he suggested tolerance. And so I borrowed that. There's a brand new dance called The Tolerance.
Just might be your soul salvation.
It might be our soul salvation.
Yeah, which is great, There's so many great lyrics in that. And we got to talk about how Save It for Later became so... It just crossed, over to so many different people. Tell me about the day that you got the phone call about Townsend and the trust.
Pete Townsend.
So talk to me. Pete Townsend called you. I'd rather
11 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and somebody said, "It's Pete Townsend on the phone," and I said, "Of course it is. He phones about this time every Saturday," and I thought it was somebody from General Public, one of the band, just being funny, And I answered the phone in that way, really. "Hello, Pete." No, good one, yeah. Can't wait to hear who it is. And it turns out it was Pete Townsend. "Hello, Dave," he said. "Pete Townsend here, and I'm sitting with Dave Gilmore. And we're trying to play your song, Save It for Later, but we can't work out the tuning.
That's amazing. So you got a guy from
Two
Pink
of
Floyd
my
in the Who.
complete heroes, you know.
Yeah.
Careful with the axe using. I mean, I probably still can now, but I certainly could at the time. I could sing every guitar solo on Ummagumma, both sides, you know.
So you love Pink Floyd and the Who. They're both great.
Yes, that's right. And the waving of the guitar and I'm a Boy and I Can See for Miles. I mean, those were the guitar as a weapon of change when you saw the Who, wasn't it? Like, whoa, what's he doing with that then?
Exactly.
So to have them pair, and what had happened, I'd tried to tune the guitar to play along with a John Martin record, who I like John Martin, and it turned out he was playing in an old folk and blues tuning called Dad Gad, which I didn't know. So I was just tuning up the guitar to play along, and I got it right except for one string. The G string, I tuned up to an A. Never tune your G string up to an A, else you'll have Pete Townsend on the phone. And that was the difference. So I had to tell him that was the mistake, and he tuned it down to that, and they were off. And they covered it quite a few times. Pete Townsend's done a lot of versions. So whilst I'm telling him the tuning, and I'm not really music business oriented, but I thought, hang on a second here. Now you're over the shock, and we've done the tuning conversation. This means two of the biggest superstars in the world are just about to cover your song.
Yeah.
Ka-ching. I started thinking about it, and he said, so we're using this song, Dave, it's for an earthquake benefit for El Salvador or something like that, you know.
A Princess Trust, is that what it was?
No, it was it was in Latin America. There'd been an earthquake, a volcano, or some sort of disaster, and they wanted to use the song for this benefit record. And I was like, he said it's for an earthquake benefit. I said, I think they've had enough earthquakes over there, Pete. They don't need any more. And so I don't know if I've ever made any royalties from it. I think it gets used for charities quite often, but that's great. And Eddie Vedder's played it as well. He sang it a few times with Pearl Jam. They sing it as a segue in Better Man. Yeah. And I used to sing sometimes a little segue of Better Man back into my set. And in my dreams, if there ever was some sort of charity event that would need a good laugh, I'd love to sing Save It for Later with Pete and Eddie.
Yeah.
I'd be Crosby, Stills and Nash of the... I'd have to be Crosby, wouldn't I?
That'd be amazing.
Live and let live.
Yeah, it'd be incredible. It just shows, how much people love the songs and how much they mean, and how it connects with people. And I love that. Speaking of which, when you ended up doing General Public, a couple of guys did Fine Young Cannibals, of course, and but General Public, man, all the rage, Tenderness, is a classic. The lyrics to that song always stuck with me. I love that. It
took a long time to write that one. A long time, 9 months, a year, maybe. Just writing and writing and writing, and then going back and picking out the lines. I wanted every line to feel like a punch to the kidney, to have a weight to it. And it's very easy, I think, if you're a wordsmith, you can write lines so that it's like every fourth or fifth one's a killer, but you can basically rhyme your way to it, But particularly with that song, I wanted every line to just be like a short image that stood in its own right, and there wasn't any fillers or roundabout lines just to get you to the next good one,
And there was that whole line about words are so cheap that they get turned out expensive. Words like conviction can turn into a sentence. I've always loved that.
Yes.
I think it's an incredible thing. And it always, every time the song starts, I know I'm getting there. I mean, all the words are great. But it
was
up.
A problem, I think, because it is awkward, isn't it? Mixing politics and pop. People used to ask me, do you think it's okay to mix politics and pop? And I said, well, only really if you're singing the songs to other human beings, because we're both caught up in them. Our lives have got pop and politics in them. the politics affects everything we do. So I don't think it's off target or off the menu or anything. But you have to be careful that it's your opinion, and everybody else has got a right to theirs as well. It's a stage, not a soapbox. And sometimes you can feel so passionate about something, whether you're a singer or not, that you can go on about it a bit too long for other people's preference. You've got to be aware of that too, you know. So you can get a reputation for it, not just our group, but other groups. You can get a reputation as a charity Charlie. Oh, never met a cause he didn't like that one, you know.
Yeah.
Rainforest 1 week, Antarctic, then okay, you know. And so it can be seen as though you're using popular causes to make yourself look angelic or, you know, politically astute or whatever. So there is quite a lot of cost to it, and a few people who disagree with that particular opinion will say they hate all your records, including the ones they liked before. So there's another can be another cost, and so it did seem that words like conviction can turn into a sentence just because you mean something, but then you can end up paying the price for a long while, or even, you know, people end up going to jail, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. It works on so many different levels, that lyric. I mean,
that was my idea. I like quad tendres.
Yeah,
double entendres are easy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Our whole lives are double entendres, but I like to get something going that could mean 3 or 4 things and let people figure, what does he mean by that? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I thought that was great. I mean, you know, Hot You're Cool on there, Never You Done That. There were so many singles, but I loved that you know, I mean, you and Roger were doing the thing for a while, and then it was great that you started playing again. It was so good that you were coming out as a beat. And you can, of course, always do the songs that you love and that people love from general public. So you have this, you know.
I'm really enjoying playing live at the minute. Although I fell off last year for a few weeks, I'm used to performing sober. Now, or at least alcohol sober. I'm California sober.
Yeah,
but it makes a big difference. And you wear your heart on your sleeves when you had a few drinks, and then with the adrenaline of a show, you can think you're connecting like St. Michael. Then you watch the video, and it's not quite the finesse you were imagining. So even though it's and you might feel this as well, sometimes it's harder to go out there and perform and be in the moment when you're totally sober. It's a bit scarier. But then when you look back on the results, it turns out you're actually more connected than when you thought you were in the flow. I don't know if it's the fear drives you to connect. Because it's that real. Look, they're all looking at me. You go out in the first song. They're all looking at me. I'm an introvert. What am I doing this for?
Well, you know, it's amazing because, I mean, it's certainly, seeing you perform recently has just been, I mean, it's great. I mean, your voice sounds great.
I'm singing really well. Yeah. I take it more seriously now. The concerts used to be a short but noisy interruption in the day's events. But it was all over pretty quick, and you were back on the party bus. It didn't last long. Look, we're halfway through, you know. But now it's the whole raison d'etre of the whole day. Like, I wake up, and what time's the show? What time do I have to schedule everything? And it's a bit boring, but I sleep, eat, stretch out a bit, do some light weights, I know I mean light, and try and build up towards another grandad nap, and then build up towards being the best I can possibly be at 9 o'clock or whatever it is, and see if I can hold that till about 11.
And it works.
And then you're holding your knee and carrying your leg back to the bus by 11:30. And it's worked really well, so I'm enjoying the shows more. I've got a fantastic band with me at the minute. And to be honest, first time I've ever tried it, they're like all got really big degrees in their instruments. It's the Berkeley beat, basically. And they can play anything, which can be a blessing and a curse, but so long as you direct them to what you'd like, they just play it back. It's like, You would normally, but then again, I've usually just used friends who played that instrument rather than dyed-in-the-wool professional instrument players. So it's fantastic, and I've always had this thing in my mind called Ama Reggae.
Yeah.
It's not a very exciting title, but it's where R&B and reggae meet. So reggae with a soul sensibility, and we've got a bit of that going on. So it's like Bob Marley meets Marvin Gaye. It's just got a panache to it that R&B tends to have sometimes. And so we're mixing that in with a garrulous old bloke from Birmingham.
Yeah, and still sounding great. And
it's
still
sounding lovely,
sharp.
the shows, and
I'm
really pleased with the voice. After the pandemic, I hadn't sung for a few months. Yeah, and I wondered, was it still there? But I think it really enjoyed the rest, and now I've come back with new earplugs, so I don't sing so hard. A more contained and condensed band, so I can sing 5 or 6 nights in a row without really getting any sore. Now it's nearly too late. I finally learned how to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's not too late. It's great. You're
golden years. I'm enjoying them.
I'm so grateful we're both here and we're doing it. I'm gonna just say,
I know.
Dave, I so appreciate you coming by and hanging out for the show today. It's amazing. I want to tell people you can get this version of I Just Can't Stop It, which is on the Magenta vinyl. There's also
you've been an inspiration to me the last couple of 3 years. Right from the start of your Twitter experience and the struggles and the travails and the journey back up to the surface. And I really appreciate your enthusiasm for life and your willingness to encourage other people. Because everybody has a tough time, don't they?
Yeah.
But you did a charming and vulnerable version of what it's like for somebody to rebuild.
Yeah.
Take note of the past, but still not let them feel that guilty about their life that it spoils the enjoyment of the moment.
Yeah.
You've explained that in your own way to a lot of people, and I've appreciated that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, that means the world to me, Dave, coming from you, who's been a fan of yours for so long. And it really, I've got a lot of gratitude because I get to, I still get to do what I love, right? I mean, I get to talk to artists that, I'm fans of like you, and I get to play music for people and let people know that there's, if you want to put the brakes on it or want to make a change in your life, you can do it. It's possible. If I can do it at my age, then anyone else can do it as
music
well.
is the fuel.
It is. It's everything. It really is.
I like that you say it was the same passion that you felt about the music when you were 15.
Yeah.
Because that is a thing, isn't it? Those songs, they stay with you forever. I listened to one of those songs, Don't Walk Away, Renee.
But the Left Bank, one of the greatest. And the Four Tops. Yeah, there's 2 versions of it. Yeah.
And I hear that and I go right back. I can smell the room. I can see the people who were there. I can feel what it was like. It's not just a memory. It transports you back there somehow. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but it's a memory on any number of different levels. And those songs are some of the ones. Ha ha, said the clown.
Yeah, Man for Man or Yardbirds. There's 2, right? So was it Man for Man, that version?
Manfred Mann, the English version.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, I like that version better.
Just turning into a pop quiz.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, what's so funny about it is, there's 2 versions, but I prefer the Man for Man version. I do.
I liked it. It was very
was that Mike Dabo singing, or was it Paul Jones? I can't remember. There was 2 different singers. I'm thinking it's Mike Dabo, right? The guy
I think it probably was. Yeah.
Who did Mighty
And
Queen.
I liked the Four Tops version of Renee, only over one line. The Left Bank, you won't see me follow you back home. You won't see me. The Four Tops was struck. You won't see me follow you back home. Went the Four Tops, and Left Bank cut the line in half. Which I didn't like.
Yeah.
Sounded more demonstrative. The Four Tops version.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You won't see me follow you back home.
Well,
is what the Left Bank did. I'm like, that don't scandal.
Yeah, well, it's
they wrote it, but
I know. It's so interesting how, there's certain versions that were hits in different places, right? So, You got the Four Tops version was a hit in the UK, right? And it's almost like Benny Shape Me, Amen Corner,
Yep.
and American Breed.
Yes,
I
that's
knew
right.
the American Breed version, grew up on that.
Yeah.
And Amen Corner didn't come out here, and it's wild how there'll be different versions
That's
or
right.
hits in different
But
territories.
lots of people, Donovan make a career out of it. Lots of people would just bring out songs that were hits in America and nobody ever knew.
Yeah.
We thought, well, that's good. Where did this come from?
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
you find out later it came from here. Which was odd about the British invasion, really. You think about it. It was taking all sorts of different forms and songs of Americans, putting them together with a British accent, then coming back here and selling it.
Yeah.
But I think it was because in England, say, there was only one radio station,
Yeah.
BBC. That
BBC.
was it.
Yeah.
Only one TV show, Top of the Pops. So if something was in the charts, it was played. So you'd have the Four Tops, the Rolling Stones, Diana Ross and the Supremes, the Kinks,
Yeah.
all on the same show. And we didn't know it was meant to be separate
Yeah.
because they could only afford one channel. So
Yeah,
it was all
I
on
mean,
the same one. When we got here, I remember a girl at a college show said, "You know that Tears of a Clown song of yours?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Somebody's already covered it, you know, but it's really slow. No good at all." she never heard
Smokey
Robinson of the Miracles.
That's incredible.
So that was, I think, part of the charm of it. It always used to amuse me, the British invasion. We're bringing some of your songs back.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the Beatles did it, right? And
Exactly, and the Rolling Stones. We didn't
and
know.
the Stones, and doing
We thought,
songs.
gosh, these people have got so good at writing songs
Yeah.
all of a sudden. Where's this from?
Yeah.
America.
Yeah, it's incredible. What a history, and I love all that stuff too. And I'm sorry, that's from both sides of the Atlantic. Dave, thank you so much for coming by and hanging out.
Thank
with
you
us.
very much for
So
having me.
good to spend time with you. It's Matt Pinfield, new and approved with Dave Wakeling of the English Beat and General Public, and just so happy to have you here in the studio with me and get to catch up about all those records that have meant a lot to so many of us here in Southern California and for those watching anywhere in the world right now. I'm Matt Pinfield. I'll be back with you soon. Thanks for watching and listening.